Welcome back. This review, as always, is an excerpt from my podcast, which is called Switchcraft, your source for Nintendo news 3 days a week. On every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, you can expect to find more Nintendo Switch news than you can shake a stick at in your podcast feed. If you just head on over to runjumpstomp.com and subscribe there, or just search for Switchcraft in your favorite podcatcher. All right, let's jump in to this review. Another game that I played since last episode is Tiny Barbarian DX, and I'm just going to tell you right off the bat, this game is fantastic. I love Tiny Barbarian DX on the Nintendo Switch. Super fun game. Let's talk about it. We've got the good, the bad, and the broken. The good. The art style in this game is really cool. It's one of those games where you're kind of halfway between the 8-bit and the 16-bit era. It uses the style, but with a little more panache, I guess. So I really like the art style. The art direction is very good. The animations are fantastic. Your character, if you leave him alone for a little bit, he'll just start flexing and showing off his muscles. And in fact, there is even an attack, or it's not really an attack, it's more of a defense, where he will just flex to reflect bounce projectiles off of him so that they don't actually do harm or knock somebody away. The music is awesome, and I'm going to find out if I can find this on soundtrack, because it's really, really good chiptunes music. And it's got really great controls, pixel perfect controls, which are really important because you got to make really good jumps. You got to attack at exactly the right time. You can even customize the controls. It's just 2-button controls, by the way, attack and jump, and then the D-pad, and that's it. There's lots of different secrets to find. Like, I finished the first section. So the game is basically, how do I want to say this? The game is broken into 4 sections, or maybe it was 5 sections, I think. And in the first section, there's a whole bunch of different worlds. It almost shows like a Ghosts and Goblins kind of world map to show you that you have to move across these areas right before you go through the areas. So I finished that first chapter off, and when I got done, it was like, number of diamonds found, 0. And I was like, what? Like, I missed out on all kinds of secrets that the game showed me afterwards that I would have to go back and find. So there's a lot of secrets to find, like breaking blocks or climbing chains that go up higher than the screen, so you can climb up and find some food up there. I love every time a video game developer gives me the option to control my volume of the game separately, so I can control the sound effects and the volume of the music separately. And most of the time, I would turn the music completely off and listen to my own music, but this stuff I left on because I know I said this already, but the music in Tiny Barbarian is amazing. Let's see, what else? Boss fights. Boss fights were really, really great. I died quite a few times on the boss fights, but I always felt like it was my fault. It wasn't because the game like cheesed out on me. So when you die in this game, you know that you've made the mistake and it's not your fault. Or it's not the fault of the game. It's the fault of you just not being good enough. I've said this before on the show, but it's an important point to make, is that the D-pad on the Joy-Cons is really, really good for side-scrollers. Like, a lot of people looked at it, and I know that a lot of people disagree with me, but I feel like the D-pad on the Joy-Cons is a very good D-pad. It's not the traditional D-pad that people are used to, and I think that's why it gets a lot of kickback, but I think it's great. There's a lot of good variety in the level design as well. So you can do like side scrolling stuff and then vertical scrolling stuff. And then there's elevator levels. There's like racing levels. We're not like racing against, for lower time or anything, but like you're running across the screen as fast as you can. I think that there's a lot of good stuff about this game. It's not perfect though. There's some bad stuff. you aren't instructed at all in how to play, and you have to figure out what moves the Barbarian has on his own. I can't figure out how to get some of the combos that happen sometimes. So like sometimes my character will do a jump with a spin and there's a sword coming out, and I don't know how I'm pulling that off. Like I haven't been able to figure that out. There's a couple other things that just aren't explained to you at all. One thing that's awesome that I almost forgot about is at the very beginning of the game, before the title screen comes up, you are on this big, tall platform, and the monsters are crawling up the side of the platform and attacking you. And the game doesn't actually start until you die. And then that like scene pans down, and the words "Tiny Barbarian" pop up, and then you hit start, I think, or plus, and it takes you into the game, which is really cool. Like, it's so weird that you're playing the game before the game starts, which is neat. They actually have a horde mode. Horde mode implies... Well, no, okay, yeah, they have a horde mode and multiplayer as well. So I guess there's more good stuff than bad. The bad stuff is that feeling when you have only one health left and you just absolutely know there's no way I'm going to make it to the end of this level. I feel like the checkpoints are just a little bit too far apart. I would have liked a checkpoint halfway through each one of the little sections, because basically the way the game works is you run across or up, or you go from one side of the map to the other, basically. And when you get to the other side of the map, you never have to do that again. But I would like a checkpoint like halfway through, so that I wouldn't, like, if I die at the very end, which happened to me a lot, I don't have to go all the way back and to the very beginning of that section again, because that can be really frustrating. The up and down flying, there's these bats that fly up and down like this in the game. They really remind me of Medusa heads from Castlevania, and I really hated Medusa heads from Castlevania. So I really hate these stupid flying bats, and they killed me a whole bunch of times. The game doesn't really use HD rumble very much. I mean, there's some rumble, but it just feels like just regular rumble, and that's too bad. I always like it when developers bring in the things that make a Nintendo console a Nintendo console. The game is multiplayer, so you just pop off the Joy-Cons, and there's only 2 buttons, so you're perfectly fine. Each player playing on their own controller there. But if you're going to get this game, be ready to be frustrated. The game requires some perfect blocks, perfect dodges, perfect jumps. And so we've gone over the good and the bad. The broken, my controllers, because the game is very, very frustrating. It's a hard game. But it's really good, and whenever you fail at the game, you know that it's your fault and not the game's fault. So I very highly recommend Tiny Barbarian DX for the Nintendo Switch. I do think that $30 is a bit much for it. I think that probably $25, but at the end of the day, it's $5 extra, and I think that this developer deserves it. So good job on Tiny Barbarian DX. Let's hit the lightning round.